You are listening to Mining Stock Education.
Thank you for tuning in to Mining Stock Education. I'm your host, Bill Powers, and in today's show, you're going to get an update from our sponsor, First Phosphate, and its CEO, director, founder, John Passalacqua. John, thank you for coming on the show. You've been traveling. You've been shaking a lot of hands, including investors and politicians and key movers and shakers. I saw you at PDAC. You were on the stage with Tim Hodgins, the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, and he had this quote to say about your company: Canada and our partners are putting real capital behind the secure and resilient critical mineral supply chains that our economies and defense industries rely on. By supporting companies like First Phosphate, we are helping deliver the minerals the world needs and the prosperity and security Canadians deserve. And you received a Canadian $16.7 million grant, non-repayable. What is this for, and what does this mean for the company?
Thank you for having me, Bill, and thank you for being in the audience the other day. As you can see, I got a little bit of a cold from shaking so many hands and giving so many speeches and everything else at PDAC. But yeah, it means a lot for the company. Basically, now it means that we're basically fully de-risked until a final investment decision. The company doesn't have to raise another penny of capital unless it plans to do so strategically to get through, basically the feasibility study, the permitting, and everything else. So it puts us in a very good shape. It puts us in a very de-risked position. And then that allows, for many, many other good things to happen.
Your treasury, if I did the calculation right, is about 37 million. Is that a good estimate now? When you include this grant?
Yeah, I mean, if you include the grant, the treasury right now is just above the 22 million, something like that. And, with the grant, yeah, you could take it up above that, but the grant is refundable, so we have to incur the expenses and then we're refunded. Just to be clear about it. So I wouldn't really include that in cash flow, but nonetheless, it does allow us to do everything we need to do up until final investment decision in non-dilutive fashion here. So we're very happy.
If I recall from our previous discussions, you're drilling through April, and then after that, all eyes are set on doing your feasibility study before a final investment decision after the permitting next year, right? That's the timeline?
Yeah, so right now the drilling program is just about done. It started in October of last year. It's very much on track. After that's done, the board will make a decision whether to move into the feasibility study. If and when we move into the feasibility study, we're indicating to the market that it will be ready by December of 2026. And that's an extremely aggressive timeline. And that's because we've had all the funds raised already for it. We have all of our internal and external staff and suppliers, consultants, everyone's set up to run with it. Everybody knows that we're cashed up. They'll be paid. And all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And we're just ready to push this thing out.
Let's do a recap for listeners that are listening for the first time that didn't get to hear our previous interview, which I will link to that interview in the show notes. Why is the P in LFP battery so important, and how does your company play into providing some of the solution?
Yeah, thanks. Great question, Bill. And maybe at this point, you can maybe show on the screen the little diagram that we have of the cathode of the battery. So, people have been going gaga over lithium in LFP because of battery energy storage, data centers, robotics, everything that we need to onshore, requiring, massive amounts of LFP-based batteries, lithium iron phosphate batteries. So the LFP battery, only 4% of it is lithium, 35% is iron, but a full 60% of the battery, that is the cathode of the battery, is phosphate and high purity phosphate, which is not easy to find. You can't find it in the fertilizer grade phosphate, but you find it, completely in the igneous phosphate rock, very rare rock, to which, we are one of the few sources in North America and Quebec that have access to that.
And your durable competitive advantage, one could say, is that you're close to a port. You're not way out in the boonies. That makes conceptually this more economic.
Yeah, that's a great thing to bring up there, Bill. We're 70 kilometers from the deep sea port of Saguenay. The deep sea port of Saguenay being, an international port, having lots of capacity, has lots of industrial capacity as well at the port, where we have a really good spot where we can, process the phosphoric acid as well. We have no infrastructure to build. We are an open pit mine. We're like 2 kilometers from a major, provincial state highway, if you will. We've got hydro to the site. We've got, workforce within a 40 kilometer radius. Even during our drill program, it went so quick because we barely needed to have any camps on site because everybody could just commute in from the neighboring towns. It's an incalculable advantage. If you look at, many of the companies out there finding, reserves of different critical minerals. They're not like gold, right? They're big, they're bulky. You need to be near infrastructure. So some of these big reserves that have been found, many of them in lithium, they're far away. And everyone says, yeah, even though they're great, we just don't know if they can ever get into production because of all the intense capex that they need for the infrastructure to be able to get to these mines. But we don't have that problem at all. We got it all there. And that's precisely why we chose the Baie-Jean-Marsh property. It's all there.
Another press release you had out recently was in regards that phosphate is now on the A list of critical metals in Canada. What does this mean for the company?
Yeah, it's massive as well. This happened actually just a few days before we received the Natural Resources Canada subsidy. So the government of Canada, in their final budget for 2025, they came out and added phosphate to what is the A list of critical minerals. So phosphate was added to the critical minerals list of Canada, I believe, in 2025. And that seems to be not enough. There's another list, an A list of clean tech minerals, where you get, some of the things like copper, lithium, nickel, some of the rare earths, gallium, antimony, and things like that are really critical. So we got added to the super critical list, phosphate, because they realized, even in discussions in the legislature, that it was no longer about fertilizer, but it was about electrification, and that our project was 100% geared just towards electrification. And they finally realized and woke up to the fact that 75% of the batteries being produced on this planet are LFP batteries, lithium iron phosphate batteries, and that we can have a major industry here in Quebec, in Canada, over that, because we have a natural advantage. We've got the resource that's here, and it's very rare. This phosphate is even more rare than lithium or than anything else. So they came out, they put us on that A list. Now, what that A list does, it means that for all future exploration, even though we're coming out of exploration for the most part, we'll get a special credit for the investors. That's the CMETC credit. But more importantly, Bill, this is the one to focus on for all the downstream. That is the building of the concentrator at the mine, the building of the phosphoric acid plant, and also LFP CAM facilities. All of those will get this 30% refundable tax credit, which is, it's huge when you're building out a mine. It just reduces our capex and our risk substantially. So very, very thankful to the government of Canada for all they've done for us and for, recognizing the potential of phosphate. I think, a lot of these critical minerals lists out there, they've got all kinds of minerals on there, but all countries, right? But then you got to drill down and ask yourself, what does a country actually have? And this country's got high purity igneous phosphate, one of the few in North America, one of the few in the world, and just a big advantage. So having that on that list allows this industry to develop a lot quicker, allows First Phosphate to develop a lot quicker, and we're immensely thankful to the government of Canada for that.
In regards to the plant that you're conceptualizing, I believe it's 10,000 tons per year, if going back and researching that, and you're conceptualizing it 20 kilometers from the deep sea port.
Yeah, so that's will be the iron phosphate and lithium iron phosphate CAM plant. That's the one that takes the phosphate after it's been, extracted from the earth, turned into a concentrate, and then turned into phosphoric acid. Make it into the LFP CAM that goes into the LFP batteries. And I'll show you some LFP batteries here on the screen in a second. But all the LFP CAM in there, yes, that's where we would start at 10,000, fully commercial, using fully commercial processes, no R&D, no bench, no pilot, just commercial processes that were first invented in North America around 2001. So we plan to get that going. Right now, that's a little bit of pause. We're waiting to see what the situation is going to be on the tariffs between Canada and the US. We were hoping that would be over by now. So we have to basically, put a little pause on that and wait to see what happens with all of the rulings on trade here in the next few months. And then we'll make some definitive decisions on where we'll be locating those plants in Canada and or the US.
Just on that note, as an American, listening to the Canadian critical minerals subsidies that we're giving out and talking about how to advance Canada's resource sector, talks of the US were notably left out, in my opinion, just because there was the European Investment Bank there was EU representatives, but the obvious neighbor is who you do about 75% of your transactions and exports with, the US.
Yeah, so Bill, I think during our announcement, our main leading off takers are from Europe. and the Belgium authorities were on stage as well. There was the special envoy to critical minerals for Belgium and the EU that was part of our announcement, as was the ambassador to Belgium, because it's an important strategic resource to Belgium and to Europe. But it's not to exclude anybody else. I mean, First Phosphate's willing to work with any government of the world. We're certainly working very strongly in the United States, and I know there's a whole cloud of politics over all of these critical minerals all over the world. But us as an organization, we're here to work with everybody, and we're here to basically build a critical mineral system, especially for LFP battery in all of North America and Europe.
And on that note, reaching Americans, you now have 2 tickers on the OTCQX for Americans. I want to ask you about this. I've never seen this before. You're on the OTCQX under the ticker FRSPF, and that is the best OTC exchange. And then you're also trading an ADR, an American Depository Receipt, under FPHOY. Why did you decide to do the ADR on the OTC as well as the standard ticker?
So, Bill, I think you've kind of figured it out by now, as many have. We're not afraid here at First Phosphate to be trailblazers. We're not afraid to set the stage. We're not afraid to do things differently. And we're not afraid to innovate. So this is a terribly innovative cap structure that we've developed here. So obviously we're on the Canadian Securities Exchange, the Frankfurt Exchange, TradeGate, like you said, OTCQX, the highest order of the QX. But now, yes, we've launched also, another ADR, right? OTCQX ADR. PHOY, as you can see it there, FPHOY. And that's what that institutional clients or institutional holders in the United States can get interested in the security. In our outreach to many U.S. clients, a lot of them did not want to buy on the OTCQX or wanted to buy, but they preferred to have an ADR for whatever reason. So the ADR is quite an interesting instrument. It's like a 10-to-1. It's a 10-to-1 on the FRSPF. It too does trade on the OTCQX, but some are more comfortable to buy the ADR on the OTCQX than the straight share on the OTCQX. So FPHOY is 10-to-1 on FRSPF. So if FRSPF right now is trading at 80 cents US, FPHOY will probably trade around the $8 range, something similar.
And just to make this simple for those that don't understand this, if someone buys one of the ADRs on the OTCQX, then the Bank of New York Mellon, where the depository receipt is, has to go buy 10 shares of your stock off of the CSE and hold that, right?
Yeah, you'd have to convert or buy on the CSE or on the OTCQX to create that ADR, correct?
Oh, either way. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
10 common to 1 ADR.
Does this make it easier? I know I asked you this in the last interview, and you said we're not making a decision about that yet, but does it make it easier to uplist to the NASDAQ? So, for example, a lot of the ASX listed companies will use the ADRs to get to the NASDAQ to reach American investors. Now that you have the ADR system set up, does that make an uplist potentially easier?
Yeah, it should make an uplist potentially easier at some point when all of the requirements are met. In the meantime, we're finding that the ADR is doing a really good job at setting up, a more cross kind of arbitrage opportunities, if you will. It's bringing a lot of attention, it's bringing a lot of volume into the stock. So like you said, there's a lot of people moving in and out of the common into the ADR and such, and it just enhances our capital structure. We've got about, I would say about 300,000 to 400,000 shares now trading on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. We've got over 1 million. Recently, it's been 1.5 million, 2 million last few days on the CSC trading. OTCQX goes under, from 200 to 500,000 a day. The ADR, I've seen it trade as high as 1,000 shares in a day so far. It's only been going for a week, but it's been interesting. It's been interesting to watch these instruments and how they cross trade and cross pollinate.
And for listeners that love arbitrage opportunities, here's 3 tickers you can watch on a daily basis to see where the arbitrage might emerge.
But you want to hold the stock long term. Let's say that.
Of course, yes.
But for your daily trading, yes, there's. I'm sure there's going to be I've seen the ARB opportunities in there. It's really interesting, actually.
Yep. You've been buying in the open market. You want to share with listeners what you did and what price did you buy the shares at?
Yeah, so I think I bought. I don't know. It's up to 3 million shares almost in the open market since we went public. I bought about $700,000 worth of stock in February, March of last year. when the world was falling apart over tariffs and Liberation Day, if you remember that. I stepped in, as did the rest of our board. We bought a lot of stock. And just recently I made another purchase of about $100,000 of stock in the about 79 cents. We see the stock come down to about 75. Now it's back up to, I don't know, it was $1.10. It's okay. When I see that it's low, I like to get in. I like to get in also to show my shareholders that I'm supporting the company. It's a little tough sometimes, right? Because I also get paid fully in shares, as does most of our board and our management. So we are making really big bets on the company. And I think it's important for shareholders to see that we're aligned with them.
That's right. And your shares at IPO, looking back 3 years ago, I think you hit $1.20 per share Canadian. And on this past Friday, you hit $1.18 Canadian. So you're right at that all-time high level.
Now, I think it's gone actually through a 52-week high over the last few days. Obviously, we came out with great news with the. I think the ADR was a really good boost to the stock. I think also the fact that the government of Canada brought phosphate onto the A list was a great development. Then obviously the contribution of almost 17 million from the federal government was a great piece of news for the company. So all of that has helped us. Has helped us really to move higher here and then get the volumes really going, and it has got us to a new 52-week high, which is great to see. I still think we're very undervalued. We only trade at about 5% of the NPV of our PEA. We're almost done exploration. We're almost moving into feasibility. And I think the government of Canada has made it really clear that they want this mine to happen. So when you've got that kind of support behind you and you're trading at 5% of your NPV, there's a hell of a lot of upside in here. This is why I think investors have made a good bet in sending the shares to the 52 new high. We're stronger than we've ever been. We're multiple stronger than when we first went public. Obviously, from when we went public to now, there was this big glut in the market. If you remember that big sell-off in the lithium space and in the electrification space, and it took everything lower. But we've just executed through it. That's what I always told everybody, just keep executing through it. If they're throwing out the baby in the bathwater, it will, in the end, execution will be rewarded. And that's what we're seeing. Execution on the part of First Phosphate is being rewarded. So we're just going to keep executing.
First Phosphate's website is firstphosphate.com. The ticker symbols were mentioned. You should see them on screen if you're watching on YouTube. I'll also put them in the show notes. They are a show sponsor, and I did invest personally last year. John, thank you for this update. Enjoy a little time with the family, and I hope you get better.
Thank you so much, Bill. Always great to be on here.